So there's a famous quote by the philosopher Socrates at his trial for corrupting the youth of probably Athens or someplace in Greece. Athens? And he said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And after spending the last decade doing online courses, I've decided the unrecorded talk is not worth giving. So I'm going to be recording this talk, and you can go and watch it later. We'll send it out. I'll put it up on YouTube so you can watch it. So I'm going to be talking today about rules for success as a graduate student. And let me give you a little background why I'm here. I'm a professor of computer science, but my background is somewhat non-traditional. I started out in sociology, so I have a master's degree and a bachelor's degree from the College of William & Mary. And then I saw the light and decided to take the technical path, so I changed to computer science. I have a master's degree and a Ph.D. in computer science from UC Irvine. And I've been a professor at various places. I was a professor at Washington University in St. Louis. I was a professor at University of California, Irvine. And then, of course, I've been here at Vanderbilt for about the past 20 years, where I've had various roles. I've also done a lot of other things during that time, all of which probably wouldn't have happened had I not gotten a Ph.D. So I was a program manager and deputy office director at the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, DARPA. They're the folks who invented the internet before Al Gore did back in the day. I was also the deputy director of research and the chief technology officer of the Software Engineering Institute at Carnegie Mellon University. And I've also done lots of other interesting things. As of many of my colleagues here, we've been on scientific advisory boards for the Air Force, and I was also the chief technology officer for several startup companies along the way as well, including Prism Technologies. So one of the key things to remember, one of the rules of success is prepare for change. What you learn here, of course, will set you on a path of professional success in your focus area, but don't be surprised if things will evolve and change over time. And one of the great things about getting a PhD is it puts you in a very good position to adapt to new situations and be able to rise to the occasion for new challenges and opportunities, which you often would not have without that PhD. So we'll start by asking a very important question. Why do you want to be a graduate student? So if you want to be successful in almost anything in life, it's important to have goals, and it's important to have motivation to achieve those goals, because oftentimes, as we'll see, it takes a fair amount of work to do that. And unfortunately, there are some people who end up in graduate school without really being sure why they're here and what their purpose is, their bigger purpose in life is. Here are some common reasons you might decide to be a graduate student. One reason, which is a great reason, is you have a burning desire to explore a field of interest, discover new knowledge, meet interesting people, and inform them, educate them. That's a good reason to be in grad school. You might also want to increase your personal competitiveness, so you're going to be in a better position to get the job of your dreams, or the career of your dreams. You'll get a signing bonus. If you go become a professor, you'll get a signing bonus. It's called a startup package. And it comes with all kinds of goodies that many of you will discover, because you'll have a lot of new faculty here with a signing bonus, a startup package, which is great. Sometimes people go to grad school because they don't really want to face the real world yet. That was honestly my reason. I was like, I don't really know what I want to do, so I'll go get some more education. I also had a student loan in those days that didn't have to be paid back until I graduated from school. And I got it back in like 1980 when I went to undergrad. And I didn't have to pay it back for 14 years. That was awesome. They kept sending me, towards the last 4 years, they were like, are you really in school still? What's going on here? And of course, another reason you might want to go become a grad student is you want to impress someone. You might want to impress your parents. You might want to impress your relatives. You might want to impress your significant other or your brothers and sisters or whoever, right? Your friends. The key point, however, is if you aren't sure why you're here, then you may have a hard time staying the course. There's a wonderful movie, if you haven't seen it yet, called The Three Idiots. A lot of people from India have seen it. It's very funny, but it's all about people who their parents want them to go be engineers, but they don't all necessarily want to be engineers. One guy, I think, wants to be a nature photographer or something like that. And the point again is make sure you're here for the right reasons. There's a guy named Matt Groening who has done all kinds of funny stuff over the years. And he has this cartoon called School is Hell, but it beats working. And it's lesson 19 is grad school. Some people never learn. And so here's a different set of questions. Why should you go to grad school? Oh, we test. You can check true or false. I am a compulsive neurotic. I enjoy having my imagination crushed into dust. I enjoy being a professor's slave. My idea of a good time is using jargon and citing authorities. And I feel a deep need to continue the process of avoiding life. So obviously this is a joke, but it's sometimes a little truth to it, and you'll probably run into periods of time during your journey here where you'll ask yourself these questions. Am I compulsive neurotic? Why am I here? So grad school can be a lot of work. It's wonderful work, but you have to realize why you're going to go through all this trouble and what you're going to get out of it. Let's talk a little bit about the 3 stages of research evolution. Now, Akos gave you sort of a summary of the program requirements. I'm going to give you a slightly different perspective. So the grad school progression starts as a novice, goes to an expert, and then finally, as you get past this into your career, you become an advocate. So you are probably here, and this is by no means an insult. I'm sure all of you are incredibly talented at what you do, but you're perhaps a novice at the art of being an effective researcher and scholar. If you want to be an expert in this world, you need to have a Ph.D. And then later you can become an advocate. You can go out and work for the National Science Foundation or NIH or DARPA and help promote your vision and make it a reality to instill upon others. This is the path to get from novice to expert. And these are the things that Akash was just talking about. Coursework, prelims, qualifying exams, your final defense, and so on and so forth. This very well could be the best time of your life. It'll certainly be one of the more memorable times of your life. And the friends you'll make here will be friends for life. So make sure you use it productively. And so the key rule of success here is understand the PhD requirements. And the best way to learn those things is to read that link, talk to Carrie, talk to Akash, talk to other people, talk to your advisor. Usually your advisor doesn't really know, so you could talk to Akash or Carrie. They'll straighten you out. There are 2 types of grad students generally. One is bored, and the other is busy. And your goal should be to stay busy. And if you find yourself being bored, you need to ask, why am I bored? What should I be doing differently? And that could mean going out and getting a job in the real world. It could mean changing advisors. It could mean getting some additional help from your colleagues and your support group and your mentors and so on. So if you find yourself bored, you need to do something about it. You may need to take a leave of absence. When I was a graduate student, after I got my master's degree at UC Irvine, I was a little bit bored. And so I decided to go work for some time. So I went up to Silicon Valley and worked for a while, and it gave me great new insights. In fact, it really changed my whole life in all kinds of ways because I learned about networking, whereas before I was just a software engineering person, but I learned about networking and it changed my research, and so it gave me a lot of insights that I would not have otherwise have. So taking a leave of absence can be a very healthy thing from time to time. Now, busy doesn't just mean doing mindless things without thinking about it. It means being goal-directed, proactive, and productive. And the single most important way to be productive in our world is to write good papers after, of course, conducting good research and get them published in high-quality venues. And we'll talk a bit more about that in just a second. The dean of the engineering school in 400 BC, Thucydides, said, people who have the knowledge but lack the power to express it are no better off if they'd never had any ideas at all. So being able to express and articulate what you're doing is really important. So third rule of success, we started counting at 0, by the way, of course, because we're C and C++ and Java influenced. Surround yourself with productive mentors and colleagues and learn from them. So I talked about papers. Writing papers, publishing papers, doing the research necessary to write and publish good papers is crucial. And in some sense, the ultimate, this may shift over time as we have different priorities in our leadership in the department, but if you can publish in high-quality archival journals, that's great. If you can also publish your papers in high-quality, highly selective conferences, that's also great as well. Computer science is one of the handful of fields that rewards publishing in conferences often as much, if not more so, than publishing in journals. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that we don't have time to go into right now. Getting your Google Scholar citations to be high and citation indices and bibliographic metrics also helps too. This journey can be incremental. You don't have to get to Mordor and throw the ring into Mount Doom in the first couple of weeks as a grad student. You can wander around for a while. You can visit Rivendell. You can talk to the elves and so on. The process typically goes from a tech report or a workshop style paper which you may actually have done as part of your classwork, to a conference, to a journal. That's sort of the progression. So you might start out with a tech report or something you do in a class. You might turn that into a workshop paper where the criteria and the bar for acceptance is relatively low. You do some additional work, you get some more results. That gets elevated to a conference. And then oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, you get a couple of conference papers, you do a little bit more stuff, and you turn that into a journal publication. And that's a very common progression. And by the time you finish, I don't want to have a specific number, but if you want to go into academia, you should expect to have, at least a half dozen, if not more, publications to have any chance at getting a good faculty job. Many places now expect more than that, but half dozen or so good papers in highly selective conferences or journals is quite within your reach. It's important, of course, as you go along this progression that each variant be different than what came before. You don't want to get accused of self-plagiarism. You don't want to get accused of multiple publishing with the same work over and over again. People ding that very hard, and there's all kinds of rules for punishing people who try to do that. And you definitely don't want to plagiarize other people's work, and you need to avoid self-plagiarism. A number of years ago, when I was first an assistant professor, there was a scandal in our field where some professor somewhere, I think he was in Greece for some reason, needling Xenophon, he would take other people's papers and republish them under his name. And what was interesting about this, of course, was he would take famous people's papers, republish it under his name, submit it to conferences, and it would get accepted because people weren't careful reviewers. They didn't realize it wasn't a republication of somebody else's results. That gets a lot harder nowadays because it's so much easier to find out what people have written. So it's much more difficult. But I remember as an assistant professor, I was very insulted because he never plagiarized any of my papers. I thought, gosh, I'm not really that important. I'm not writing anything profound if he's not plagiarizing it. So anyway. There's another great quote by a more recent philosopher, Steve Jobs, who said, "Everything around you call life was made up by people that are no smarter than you, and you can change it. You can influence it." Speaking about life, of course. You can build your own things that other people can use. Or you can be like Steve Jobs and take ideas other people had and promote them as your own, of course. You can do that too. But no, he was a great facilitator of innovation. How about that? So the fourth rule of success, start doing research and publishing papers just as soon as you can. But again, you don't have to swing for the fences every time. It's an incremental process. Learning to give great talks is also important. There was a professor at MIT named Patrick Henry Winston, and he said, your career will largely be determined by how well you speak, how well you write, and by the quality of your ideas in that order. And there's quite a bit of truth to that. So once again, being able to communicate, be it in writing, speaking, whatever it is, very, very, very important. So let's kind of wrap up here. How do you keep busy? You keep busy by getting funded and staying funded. It's very hard to do good research on an empty stomach. You therefore need to learn how to obtain and sustain your funding over time. And you have to recognize there's no guarantees with funding. Research funding is a privilege, not a right. And the way you typically do it, there are three general ways to do it. You can pay for it, or you can get your family or your bank to pay for it, or you can be like Bush Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and rob banks to pay for it. I don't advise that, by the way. Or you can also be a teaching assistant or an RA, a research assistant. You should aspire to become and remain a research assistant. That's a lot more sustainable for various reasons. So fifth rule of success, take responsibility for ensuring your funding. So two types of funding, RAs, TAs. Teaching assistantships are typically intended for first-year students. There are exceptions to that, but that's not very common. We try to make that not too common. In that case, the department provides or the school provides the funding. The main responsibility there is to help people teach classes and typically go to hold office hours, grade papers, grade assignments, those kinds of things. And you have to do well at that, otherwise you don't get your funding, and it's typically, again, for fairly short term. The preference is usually given to incoming first-year students. Much better way to get funded and stay funded is to be an RA, research assistant. This is provided by individual faculty members as part of their research grants or contracts. Your goal there, of course, is to help the faculty and their group with the work that they're doing. Once again, this is crucially important to make sure that you have a good match for what they want to do and what you want to do or what you want to learn how to do. And of course, contingency of funding and availability of funding and your progress is essential to maintaining support. So, sixth rule of success, identify a research advisor as soon as possible, but you don't necessarily have to marry the first person you date, right? So if it turns out that the person you thought was going to be this wonderful match doesn't turn out to be a wonderful match, that is not the end of the world. I changed advisors a couple of times during my career as a grad student, and I was so much the better for it. In fact, I ended up having 2 advisors in the end, and that was great. So I got, twice the amount of mentorship that I otherwise would have gotten. Again, kind of a quick recap from some of Akosh's stuff. So these are the people you need to know, as well as your advisors. And please do your best to meet all the other faculty. It's going to be a lot better now that we can be in person, of course, but it was a little bit complicated the last couple of years because you don't really know anybody in person. But Julie Johnson, she's not here, unfortunately. She's great. She's another associate chair. I'm an associate chair. We are here to help you together with everybody else. So get to know everybody, meet them, do the best you can, be social to the extent that it's possible to do that in our weird pandemic world. And then finally, this very well may be the best time of your life, so make sure that you enjoy it. And you can get the link here, which is where I have the slides for this talk, and I will post the video to YouTube later, and I will send it out for everybody. Thank you.